Hi, everyone. My name is Kelsey. I'm the Director of Programs at Dying with Dignity Canada, and I'm joined today by my colleagues Amanda and Taylor. We'd like to begin today by acknowledging that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, the Métis, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. These nations continue to experience ongoing colonization and displacement. Today, Toronto is covered under Treaty 13 and the Williams Treaties. Dying with Dignity Canada is also mindful of broken treaties that occurred across Turtle Island and recognize our responsibilities as treaty people to engage in a continuous process of truth and reconciliation with all peoples across the land. I'm thrilled to welcome you today to our webinar. Through these webinars, we aim to provide you with information and key takeaways, as well as create a space for conversation about end-of-life topics alongside the professionals that know it best. Before I welcome our two speakers for today, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items with you. As a reminder, everyone on the call today is muted, but that said, we would love to hear your questions and comments. You will have the opportunity to submit those using the Q&A side panel on your screen. Please do try to keep your questions as clear and concise as possible so we can get to as many of you as possible today. If we don't get to your question, or if you have a question that's more personal in nature, you're welcome to email us as well. Our email is support@dyingwithdignity.ca, and the phone number to reach us is also on your screen there. We also want to hear from you after the session today. We're going to have a survey pop up on the screen, and if you could take a few minutes to fill that out, your feedback is very much appreciated as we plan for future sessions and hear about your thoughts about our meeting today. Also in that survey, we're recruiting for an upcoming series of our Deaf Dialogues program. So if you want to register for that, you're welcome to sign up through the webinar survey. And finally, I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. So first we have Angela Refuse, who's the founder of My Grandfather's Cat, a nonprofit that helps seniors and terminally ill people feed and arrange homes for their pets before they move into retirement homes or pass away. It was inspired by her personal experience adopting her grandfather's cat, Mackenzie, when he passed away. She launched the organization on May 18th, 2021, her grandfather's birthday. We have joining us Dr. Ardra Cole. She's the founder and executive director of Elder Dog Canada and professor in lifelong learning at Mount St. Vincent University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Her research focuses on the meaning of dogs in seniors' lives and the role of dogs in continuing care. Ardra has published extensively on dog-human relationships and received numerous awards for the creation of Elder Dog, her research, and community service. She lives in Lunenburg County with her beloved elder dogs, Poppy and Beaufort. Thank you so much for joining us today. We do have a bit of a mixed format for this afternoon. So our speakers have both kindly prepared a short presentation for you about their respective organizations. After that, we're going to do an interview, and Amanda's going to come on to do that. And then we're going to open up the floor to your audience questions. So I'm going to turn it over to Angela to get us started.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. As Kelsey said, my name is Angela Refuse, and I am the founder of My Grandfather's Cat. This is my grandfather's cat, Mackenzie. She is our founding cat, and the photo I use for everything. So that's Mackenzie, and we will get started. So we are so happy that you are here. It is so important to talk about animals long before the day comes that you need to find a second forever home for them. So My Grandfather's Cat is a registered Canadian charity that helps seniors and terminally ill people feed and arrange second forever homes for their pets before they move into retirement homes or pass away. So as Kelsey kind of chatted about, our story started in December of 2019. I adopted my grandfather's cat, Mackenzie, when he passed away, knowing the only options at the time were to either adopt her or take her to a shelter. I chose to adopt her. At the time, Mackenzie was known for being a mean, grumpy cat. And over the first year that I had her, I learned that she's truly a sweet, loving, and adventurous cat with just a little bit of attitude. I began sharing cute videos of Mackenzie on social media to pass the time. It was during the pandemic. Many people started commenting and asking why her name was Mackenzie. And I shared that I didn't name her, that she was my grandfather's cat. Many started to share their stories with me about how seniors worry about what will happen to their animals when they move into a retirement home or pass away. Without friends or family to take their animals, these seniors feared that their animals would live out their remaining days in a shelter. It was the same fear my grandfather had with Mackenzie. So I founded my grandfather's cat on May 18th, 2021, which was my grandfather's birthday. So that was 3 years ago. And today we have three pillars, our rehoming service, our pet pantry, and our resource guide. And we'll just go into all three. So we provide a free rehoming service to help seniors and terminally ill people arrange homes for their cats and dogs. Rather than housing animals in a foster care system, we arrange for them to move directly from their current home into their second forever home. Our goal is to help the animals stay with their human up until the very last day possible, to provide the comfort and companionship to their human that we all know animals bring. The owner of the animal does ultimately have the decision of who adopts their beloved pet. Our rehoming service is available across Canada. It is free. There is no cost associated with using our service or adopting through us. Our second program is our pet pantry. So our pet pantry provides low-income seniors with up to $200 worth of pet food and supplies shipped directly to their door. The goal of this program is to help offset the rising cost of pet food that many seniors experience with the rising cost of living. This ensures that they're not forced to give up their pets simply because they can't afford to feed them. Seniors, we work with each senior so they can select the brand and the type of food their pets eat, and we will ship the food directly to their door via Amazon. If it's a veterinary food, we'll work with their veterinarian. The goal is to provide them with the food their pet is actually going to eat because a lot of seniors have senior pets as well, and we all know they are very picky eaters. The program launched in February. It's currently set to help 100 households per year. We also partner with a licensed veterinarian to provide a resource guide. And so our resource guide shares new articles every month. The articles range from adopting a new cat to helping care for your senior cat. Some of our more recent articles have included how to look after your senior cat, how to administer medication to a cat, how to transition a cat to a new food, when your senior cat becomes a picky eater, what to do, and how to help animals process grief. Our impact. So we have these three pillars, and if Amanda can switch to the next slide. Our rehoming service has helped find second forever homes for 240 cats and dogs. Our pet pantry has fed 360 animals. That's through our outreach programs as well. And we have served 250 seniors and terminally ill people, households, and their families to date. And that's it for us.
All right. Thank you so much, Angela, for sharing some information about my grandfather's cat. Fantastic work. I'm going to go ahead and move on to Ardra Cole from Elder Dog. We're going to quickly switch over to her presentation. So just a moment, everyone. All right. Thank you for your patience, Ardra. You can go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much. And thank you, Angela. There are lots of really lovely parallels. So that's exciting to know. So we can go to the very next slide. So I started Elder Dog back in 2009. I'm a university professor, as was mentioned at the beginning, and over the course of about a decade, I was doing some research with on caregiving for people who had forms of dementia. And the broad question was, what does care look like? And so traveling across the country, speaking with family caregivers about what care looked like for their loved one, time and time again, without asking, the family dog came up as part of the care team. And so that really piqued my interest and really shifted the whole trajectory of my research. And here you see a tribute to, we call the caring canines as part of that research. On the top right-hand corner, you'll see a lovely curly brown Portuguese water dog, and his name is Tattoo, and he is now deceased. But for many years, Tattoo and I worked together in palliative care, where we visited people at end of life and their family members. And it was a very humbling experience and a very significant learning experience to watch Tattoo at work, providing comfort and knowing exactly what to do for either the ill person or the family member in an emotionally charged situation. And then at the bottom, you'll see a beautiful chocolate lab with a white muzzle. And his name was Mr. Brown. And Mr. Brown was my brother's dog. And he was an old and ill chocolate lab. He had terminal cancer. And when my brother died very suddenly, Mr. Brown was with him. And they lived together. And there was no other family member to take care of Mr. Brown. Of course, even if there was, I was going to step forward. So I did step forward and brought Mr. Brown with me to my home with my other dogs. And watching Mr. Brown and having that experience of losing a loved one who left a dog behind, I began to think about what happens to all of the Mr. Browns in the world who lose their senior companion, and more specifically, what happens to old and ill dogs. And we know that shelters are not a good place for older dogs because puppies are what people mostly line up for when they go to a shelter. So with my experience with family caregivers, with my experience with my therapy dog Tattoo in palliative care, and of course with Mr. Brown, it was kind of a no-brainer that I would start Elder Dog Canada, which I did in 2009. And then that was in Ontario. I moved back to my home province of Nova Scotia to start Elder Dog operationally, and that's where we all began in 2012. So I'm just going to say a little bit about dogs in seniors' lives, because this is a part of my research, and it's part of the foundation for Elder Dog. So we know that old age is a period when people are most deeply attached to their animals, and that when they have that bond, it's stronger and more profound in later life than at any other time, which is not surprising because as people age and families become smaller and more time is spent at home, the more important does the family pet become. And so that companionship is a vital part of an older person in particular daily existence. We also know from research that pets, and I can speak specifically for dogs, are a really important part of people's spiritual journey. There's some really interesting research done on the important role that dogs and other companion animals do play at end-of-life care, as well as in helping people, think ahead about end of life and beyond. So I've done other research that has has informed Elder Dog, and this research really speaks to the meaning of dogs in seniors' lives, both what we hear through Elder Dog on a daily basis, but also it's borne out in research. And so we hear that when people talk about their dog, they talk about their best friend, and that they can't imagine life without them, that they're their one true companion, that they're always there, and that they worry about what will happen if anything happens to them. So Elder Dog Canada is a national registered charity and not-for-profit, and we are dedicated to senior people and senior dogs and the important connection that they enjoy. We are 100% volunteer run, and across Canada, we have 3,500 active volunteers. Our national office and what we call Elder Dog Land is in Nova Scotia. We've been operational since 2012, and we have chapters, we call them pods, coast to coast, from Victoria to St. John's, Newfoundland. And there are no fees for any of our services. So what we do, we have 3 main programs. One of them is our Dog Care Support for Seniors program. And in that program, we strive to help people who are living at home with a dog to be able to stay in that relationship as long as possible. And we do that through providing various kinds of dog care support, dog walking and exercise for people who have mobility issues, transportation to and from appointments. We have dog food banks. We provide emergency foster care for people who have a medical emergency and need temporary care for their dog. We help with administering medication and with basic grooming, such as brushing and nail clipping and bathing in cases where that's a challenge for an older person to do. Our second program is our older dog care, rehoming, and long-term and perpetuity care program. And so if someone has to move into accommodation where they're no longer able to keep their dog, or if they pass away and have no one to provide a home for their dog, we will help in that regard and provide a loving new home for their dog. We also have a long-term and perpetuity care program. So this is for people and dogs of any age who are planning ahead and asking themselves the question, what will happen to my dog if something happens to me? So the long-term care and perpetuity care program is a registration with Elder Dog and a commitment from Elder Dog to provide a loving new home in the event of someone's passing. And then our education outreach and research program continues. We do a lot of outreach across the country, education about the human-canine bond to health professionals and members of the public. And of course, as I mentioned before, we carry on with the research program. So this is just a map of our 37 plus pods across the country, and you can see where they are. So our pods are really our local chapters, and they're coordinated clusters of volunteers, and they reflect Elder Dog goals and programs. They're consistent across the country, and they're supported by community groups, organizations, and local businesses. So we have arrangements with veterinarians across the country, with all of our pods, and local businesses such as pet food stores who provide various, they provide dog food for our food banks, and they also provide pet gear to the pods as donated items. So all of the work across the country, everything we do is guided by a set of principles and values of dignity and respect, health and well-being, comfort, quality of life, paying tribute in life and in death, integrity, and sustainability. And this is just an image of a sample of the many stories of older adults and their dogs who have been touched by Elder Dog and been unable to either keep their dogs or have adopted an older dog when they wanted a companion and weren't able to adopt from a shelter who have an age restriction. So you know. And there's our contact information. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Ardra. Thank you so much, Angela, for that wonderful presentation. So now we're going to move on to some questions that we have prepared for today. And so we'll start off perhaps with Ardra. You covered quite a bit of this in your presentation already, so I just want to add to offer you any more time to speak on this. But I'd really like to ask, who is eligible to receive the supports you offer? Are there any requirements? Does this individual have to be sort of approaching end of life or considering end of life in order to register? I'm curious if you have anything else to share.
Yeah, so for all of our programs, other than the long-term perpetuity care, our mandate is primarily for older adults and older dogs. And somewhere in the equation, there should be a senior. And we loosely interpret what it means to be a senior. So we have a policy really of never saying no, but always, if we can't help, always providing alternative resources when available. There is no proof of need required. If someone makes the very difficult move to ask for help, then that to us means that they need help and they don't have to prove it to us. In our long-term and perpetuity care program, there are no age restrictions because this is for people who are planning ahead at any age. So that's, yeah, so I wanted to just clarify that.
Yeah, thank you. Angela, same question to you. You covered quite a bit of this in your presentation, but who is eligible to receive the supports you offer and if there are any requirements for any of the programs?
Yeah, so our rehoming service is for seniors or terminally ill people. Anybody that is participating is not the right word. Anybody that is opting to do MAID is eligible for our rehoming service as well. Essentially, anybody who has to rehome their pet because of something health or life-wise that is out of their control, not necessarily moving or things like that, but either they're moving into a retirement home or they're at the end of their lives in some capacity. Our pet pantry is anybody, normally 65 plus, that is low income. But as Ardra said, the definition of a senior, it's not as cut and dry as you would put in a document. So when people reach out to help, we help as many people as we possibly can, and we're able to.
All right. Thank you both so much. Next question. Maybe we'll start with Angela this time. Can you speak to the dynamics and relationship between a person and their pets?
I mean, I can speak to my personal relationship with my pet. I think the more time you spend with an animal, the more you just fall in love with them. I think we all know the definition of foster fail. It was people try their best to temporarily care for an animal, and it's very, very hard to let them go. And when you are at home every day, like when seniors are home with their pets, they become their whole world. Mackenzie was my grandfather's whole world, and he had 6 grandchildren that loved him very much, and she was his whole world. He would have chosen her above all of us, and we are all very aware of that. I think it's such until you've experienced that relationship, it's kind of like when people say you don't know love until you become a parent. Well, you don't know the bond between a human and an animal until you adopt.
Yeah.
That is the best way. I'm sure Ardra can speak to the more researched part of it
Yeah.
than the me just loving my cat.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, great segue. Ardra, your thoughts on the dynamics and the relationship a person forms with their pets?
Yeah, I mean, on the ground on a daily basis, we hear from seniors who, for whom Elder Dog has been a lifeline because they can't imagine a world, a life without their beloved dog, and cat for that matter, if they have both. And it's so humbling to know that, small acts of kindness can make a world of difference to people because their dog or their companion is animal. It means, as Angela said, means the world to them. And, there's a lot of stress associated and worry associated with, as they're aging and maybe declining in health, what will happen to my dog if something happens to me? And so, that is something that um, preoccupies many people because of the depth of the relationship and the attachment, the love they have for their best friend.
Yeah. Thank you both so much. Speaking on that topic again about preserving that bond that we've just spoken about between that person and their pet, both of your organizations make a concerted effort to keep pets with their owners for as long as possible. And maybe we can start with Ardra for this, but why is this such an important element of your work about keeping the pet with the senior for as long as reasonably possible?
Well, I mean, because just as we said, it's the animal, the companion animal means the world to them. And I think we're in a society that is primarily ageist, and the I think, there's a lot of isolation and loneliness, particularly in our senior population. And often their companion animal is really the only living thing they have in their life. And in fact, I, re- I remember this was had a very strong impact on me, receiving a call from an older person who needed transportation because her dog needed grooming. And she was in her early 90s. And we didn't have volunteers in where she lived at the time. And so the first question was, do you have any friends or neighbors who might be able to help before, if you need this right away? And the phone line went dead. It was a long silence. And she said, almost with this, with this tone of uh, disbelief that I would even ask the question, she said, well, Violet is my only living relative.
Hmm.
And, that just stopped me in my tracks because that's why it's so important. Violet, and there are many Violets in the world, um, was her only living relative as she saw it. And so helping Violet and her stay together was the most important thing we could do. And if Angela's work and my work doesn't happen, who's going to do it? Because,
Hmm.
you know, we need to provide for the older adults in our community, because this, we know that loneliness and isolation has been considered to be, an epidemic. And
Challenge barrier.
it, absolutely. So we need to do this. It's absolutely important.
Thank you. Angela, same question for you. Why is it such an important element of your work that we keep pets and their seniors together as long as possible?
I think Archer touched on everything, but the only thing I can add is I know I work from home. I live alone. My parents are an hour away. My friends have their own lives. My boyfriend lives in Toronto, and I always say a girl that works from home in her 20s lives a life very similar to a senior. that you get up every day, you have the same routine, and yeah, you'll go out here and there, but sometimes the only time I leave the house in the week, is because I have to force myself is to the grocery store for a doctor's appointment. And my cat is the best part of my day. And everybody deserves to have that best part of their day. And just because you get a little older doesn't mean the best part of your day should be taken away.
Wow. Beautifully said for both of you. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to some questions here, more related to the challenges that pets and seniors experience at end of life, and any insights you might have gathered from your work in both of these organizations. And we touched a bit on this through your presentation. So if there's anything else you'd like to add, we'll start with Angela this time. What are some of the challenges that seniors face when trying to care for their pets while managing their own declining health?
I think it comes down to we can all say, I'm in good health today. I'm going to adopt a young cat because I'm 30 years old. I'm in good health. I would adopt a kitten. A shelter would let me adopt a kitten. But you never know. You never know how long you have to live. You never know how healthy you're going to be. You never know also how long that animal is going to live, whether you're going to have that kitten for 5 years or 20 years. We've had a lot, especially not so much for dogs, but for cats. We've had a lot of people that have had cats well into their 20s and simply said, I never thought this cat would live this long. One of our volunteers has a 23-year-old cat named
My
Snowball.
goodness.
Yeah, cutest thing. And Snowball is in great health. So yeah, she actually adopted her mom's cat when her mom passed away because her mom never thought she would have Snowball that long. And none of us know how long we have to live. None of us know anything like that. So I forgot your question because I was
No,
going.
that's okay. Challenges
Um,
that seniors face when caring for their pets and declining health.
well, you just never, sorry, you just never know. You just never know
Yeah.
how long you'll have. You never know if your health will decline tomorrow or the next day. And I think the biggest thing comes down to worry. Is worrying about, do I have 5 years? Do I have 10 years? Do I have 20 years? And I think that happens beyond seniors at any age that people worry about
Mhm.
what will happen to their animals, especially people can discredit the love somebody has for their animal. They can discredit it so easily. And you worry that, yes, your children will be taken care of by your family, but will they see your pet in the same way? And I think a lot of seniors worry about that, as many people do at all ages of life.
Yeah, absolutely. Ardra, same question for you. The challenges that seniors can experience caring for their pets while also managing their declining health.
Yeah, I mean, I think Angela's point, about the worry, what will happen to my pet if something happens to me, but I would say at a very practical level, one of the biggest challenges is financial, especially in the current context of cost of living and access to healthcare. So, financial and the cost of veterinary care, which is rising exponentially. And so, financial challenges are real for people who are already worried about and trying to figure out their own health issues. Another real challenge that older adults with declining health have is mobility issues.
Mhm.
They're not able to get their dog out for enough exercise. They're perhaps no longer able to drive and can't get their dog out for appointments to a veterinarian or for grooming. And so those are real kind of practical challenges, aside from the ever-present emotional challenge of the worry.
The care.
Yeah, the worry
Yeah.
of future care. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you both so much. Next question. So this, we'll pose this kind of to both of you, and we'll go with sort of the practical and then the expanded advice that you might offer. But for my next question, how can seniors plan ahead to ensure that their pets will be well cared for, especially in the case where they no longer are able to manage that care and maybe don't have an immediate let's say, individual who's willing to step forward to offer that sort of perfect, well-rounded care to that person? How can seniors plan ahead for that? And maybe we'll start with Ardra.
Yeah, it's so important. And I mean, we we developed our long-term and perpetuity care program for precisely, this reason, to help people plan ahead. And it, so often we encounter people who are part of our dog care support program, and they're thinking that a friend or a neighbor will take their dog without even checking on the friend or neighbor, and come to find out that that person is not interested in taking the dog. And similarly, we receive a lot of phone calls from family members, from veterinarians who have brought a dog in, a perfectly healthy dog in, to be euthanized because their family member has passed away and no one wants a dog and no planning has taken place. Fortunately, we do get that call, but I just can't emphasize enough the importance of making sure that some trusted someone, and that there's assurance of that, is willing and has a commitment to care for your dog when the time comes.
Yeah, absolutely. Angela, same question to you. How can seniors plan ahead to ensure that their pets will be well cared for if they're no longer able to manage that care day to day? And again, not having access to somebody who would immediately sort of step forward to provide that care.
I think it's a tough one, but I think the biggest thing to acknowledge is you're here. You're having this conversation, you're already thinking about it. And everybody that is on this call today loves their animal so deeply and is already thinking about it. They're already doing their research. Whether you have a dog or a cat, you're finding out these different organizations. And like Ardra said, it's talk to your friends and family, talk to your loved ones, write down organizations. And I think a big thing is, it's funny, my own grandmother passed away recently. And
Sorry to hear that.
thank you. And the biggest thing, my mom was cleaning out her house and looking at different things like, do you think this was something of value? Do you think this was important? And heaven forbid she write it down. Write it down. Write it down. Whether it's a loved one to contact, whether you put it on the fridge, whether you talk to somebody and say, this is a book, whether it's a will, whatever it may be. And like, I know, I'm sure Audra can speak to it. You can't will animals to organizations, but you can make a note in your will that can say, please contact my grandfather's cat. Please contact Elder Dog. These are organizations that can help so the family knows where to go. For that matter, if you have an heirloom that you would like your children or grandchildren to have, please write it down. Because my grandmother. So write that down while you're. But yeah, write it down. That would be my biggest. Do your research, plan as much as you can, and even if you do contact a neighbor, your children or grandchildren might not know that. So just write it down and tell
Yeah.
people you wrote that down.
Yeah, absolutely. Solid advice from both of you. Thank you. All right, for next question, we'll go to Angela this time. When dealing with a serious illness or facing end of life, many people and their loved ones experience anticipatory grief. So this is the grief experienced before the individual in question is going to die. And I'm curious, do pets play a role in the grieving process, both as grievers and also as a support for those who are grieving?
Yeah, they absolutely do. We do a lot of adoptions for people that are opting to do MAID. And I know MAID can be a little controversial, but our organization certainly, as yours does, supports it and supports someone's choice. And for a lot of people, what's so important to them is to have their animal with them right until the very last moment. For others, they want to know their animal is already in their second forever home. But I think the more, whether you have this anticipation of grief or not, there is a level of empowerment in it as well. If you know something's going to happen, if you know you're going down that road, then you can bring the decision back and make the decision yourself. So you can decide, I'm going to rehome my pet beforehand. I'm going to tell my loved ones, I'm going to find someone to take them. I'm going to have my pet with me. Whatever you decide, there is a lot of grief, and it's a very, very difficult, but there's so much empowerment that comes along with it that I think can't be overlooked.
Yeah, absolutely. Ardra, same thing for you. Do pets play a role in the grieving process?
Absolutely. There are so many, there's so much research in that area, whether it's pets in long-term care, pets in hospice. And we have had a lot of experience as well with people whose last wish it is to have their beloved dog, in this case, with them. And, sadly, there are many hospice care situations that don't allow dogs. And it's just so, it's heartbreaking, for someone's last wish not to be honored. Um, because they know who they want with them at the end of their life. The most important decision, one of the most important decisions that they want to have a role to play in is who to be with them at this end of life. And for that to be taken away, it's really devastating. And I think to Angela's point as well, we've had experiences with MAID, and that role in decision making is so important. I can remember that this person, actually, quite young person in her 30s, she was not going to confirm the appointment until she was sure that her dogs were going to go to the best home possible. And so she was part of that decision and met her dog's new companions, and was so satisfied and relieved where they were going. She made the appointment, and on the day, our volunteers who helped to rehome and to make that arrangement was at the house, and their dogs were with their mom.
Previous owner, yeah.
Yeah, and then after she had passed, then our volunteer, took the dogs to their new home, and it was easier for them in their grief because they had already become familiar with the new home, and of course they grieved the loss of their previous companion, but they were not in a transition, like, or a temporary situation where there was a lot of unknowns. And it was just a really beautiful beautiful process, actually. And so there are lots of ways in which we really need to pay attention to the role that companion animals do play at end of life and in declining health, and also to their process of grieving, because they do grieve.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that's been wonderful to hear throughout with, the stories that you've shared is that, for these seniors that are approaching end of life or have that decline in health, that their companion is no different to a family member, and the level of care and attention and dedication that they deserve is no different than a family member. So I think it's just wonderful that both of your organizations take such strides to ensure that that person's wishes are respected and that bond is respected as well. So I think that's wonderful. All right. Next question. We'll start with Ardra this time. What advice do you have for families on how to prepare their pets for the transition, and to help them cope with the loss of their owner?
Well, I think one of the things that we know about dogs is that they thrive on the familiar. And so if at all possible, if there's a plan in place for someone to take on the care of their dog, then spending time in, with that new companion, with that new family in the new home would be really important. That's, it's an ideal situation, but, if it's possible, why not strive for the ideal? Because then the transition is so much easier for the dog, because the new place is familiar, the people are familiar. And we know as well, if a dog is going to a new home, we often take some of the belongings of the previous companion, because that scent, which is so strong in for dogs, it lingers. That's comforting. And so as they adapt to a new home, that that presence of their former companion is comfort to them. And so, I think those are just a couple of examples. And I think just to add another, we don't know, we use the language of grief because that's our language, and we don't know what animals are experiencing, but we know that they experience something, and we call it grief. And I think, we need to respect that and give animals the space that they need. And sometimes, they don't show really strong visible signs of something being quite unusual in their behavior, and we could call that grief. But often they do. And even if they don't show signs, I think we still have to acknowledge that they're probably feeling that something has changed, and they don't necessarily like that change. And so I think we just have to give them space and respect and comfort in the same way that we would do with any loved one.
Yeah, absolutely. Angela, same question for you. What advice do you have for families on how to prepare their pets for the transition and to help them cope with the loss of their owner?
Arjun nailed it. I have very little to add other than for us, we try to get as much information as we possibly can about their current like their day-to-day lives. Everybody knows, I know dogs are the same way, but cats are weirdos. They like their very weird things. Like my cat currently is obsessed with my vest. I can't take it off the bed. He has to have it every night. And the more information we can provide to what we call the second forever family, the better, the easier for the transition. So as much as you might think it's like a little quirky thing and it's not a big deal, it might really help the animal adjust, whether it's they eat at this time every day, we go to bed at this time, this is how long I'm normally away from the day, this is their routine, this is their nickname, whatever it may be. The more information you can provide about the animal or what they're used to, the easier the transition will be.
All right, thank you both so much. Next question. I think this is a great question, considering that your programs at times can jump in to be that emergency savior. And so maybe with this question, we try again to provide additional advice for viewers watching. So we'll start with Angela this time. What do people often leave to the very last minute when it comes to pet care at end of life?
Oh my goodness. For us, every situation is different. Every adoption is different. But what we always tell people is the living thing comes first. When you're dealing with an estate, once you know who's in charge or who's responsible for facilitating that state, the living thing comes first. The bank accounts, the who gets what of the property, selling the house, contacting the real estate agent, that comes second. The living thing that's in the home that you're going to feed every day, that should always be your priority and not the second thought. Because we do get a lot of people that think it's going to be easier to find a home for an animal than it is, and will call us when they say, they've already sold their parents' property, and the house is cleaned up, and now all of a sudden they need a home for the cat because the new owners are taking ownership on Thursday and it's a Tuesday evening. And I don't know any organization other than a shelter that could find a home that quickly. But if they would have, like, we all know probate takes 6 months if you're lucky. So the time that it takes, you have the time. Take the time. Find the loving home. The living thing comes first in our eyes, at least. We know I'm describing a situation that's perfect and cut and dry, but if possible, make sure the living thing and finding them a second forever home comes first.
Yeah, absolutely. Ardra, same question. What do people often leave to the very last minute when it comes to pet care at end of life?
Well, I think sometimes people make assumptions that, oh, well, if anything happens, my friend so-and-so or my daughter or my, whatever neighbor will look after my dog. And that's an assumption that's often not realized because maybe that conversation didn't actually happen, or it was just something that was put off because it's a difficult topic. And so I would say the most important thing, and the one that's often left to the end and left late, is that assurance. And as we mentioned, earlier, writing it down, making sure that whoever you think will be the person to take on the care of your dog, you want it to be a forever home, not just a temporary home. Make sure that that is a commitment that has been made and not just, a figment of your imagination or your hope, because it's often the case that we get those calls at the last minute, and they're hard ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both. We've just got a few more questions here before we'll wrap it up and move to the audience Q&A. My favorite question whenever we spotlight an organization: how can someone support or get involved with Elder Dog or My Grandfather's Cat? So Ardra, we'll start with you first. How does somebody get involved? How could they get involved? What kind of roles might be available?
Oh my goodness, volunteering in any capacity, and that I mentioned earlier, all of our programs, and at either the local pod level or at our national level, welcome volunteers of any kind, and always figure that whatever strengths you bring to Elder Dog, we will find a place for you, and whatever you can commit, that's most welcome. And so we, as long as people believe in the mission of Elder Dog and understand the importance of that bond, and the importance of us helping to support that in a whole variety of ways, then please do get in touch. And you can do that by visiting our website at elderdog.ca. We have a toll-free number. It was on a last slide, 855-336-4226. Or you can just send me an email and come directly to me, info@elderdog.ca.
All right, fantastic. And before I move on to ask this question of Angela, I'm just curious, and Angela, free to answer in this as well. Does anybody need to have personal experience with cats and dogs? Do they need to have previous ownership of an animal? Is that considered necessary to become a volunteer? Or can anybody with a love of furry friends jump in?
Yeah, anybody. We tend to attract people who, for two reasons. One, because they love working with older adults, and another, that they love dogs. And so prior experience doesn't really matter. We do find, because we'll adjust the role accordingly, right? Obviously, if you're fostering or involved in our rehoming program, prior experience matters a lot.
Mhm.
So there are many other ways of being involved. And I would say also that all of our volunteers have a vulnerable sector check and clearance, and we're photo ID for, safety and liability. And so they must be, willing to do that.
Mhm.
So there's not really a prerequisite for people to volunteer.
All right. Thank you so much. Angela, same question. How does somebody support or get involved with my grandfather's cat? And again, is that prior experience or that ownership of cats a necessity?
So we're a little different. We don't go into the homes. So the best way if you want to be involved is to join our social community. So whether you want to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, you can like our posts, share our posts. You never know who you're going to reach by sharing a post. I think we've all had somebody share something over the years that has made us do something that we probably, didn't originally plan to, like, go to an event or something like that. So I think the best way to support us is always just to follow our community, like our posts, share them, get engaged, comment something nice and supportive. Those little things can go so far in boosting the post and helping an animal find their second forever home. We also post really cute pictures of cats. So if you like cats, it's a very enjoyable place to be. We also
Say
have a
no
really
more.
loving and kind community, and we really see our social community as part of our volunteer team. There are people that are actively doing what they can. I mean, it's the easiest volunteer role ever. Sit at home and share a post on Facebook, and you're making a difference and you're helping. It's maybe not as rewarding as it would be to go into a home, but it is just as helpful. And if you do want to become an adoption volunteer, it's a little bit more work, but you can apply on our website.
Right. Thank you both so much. Final question here for both of you. What is one takeaway you would like people to remember after they leave our session today? And we can start with Ardra this time.
Well, I think just kind of to summarize a lot of what we've been saying, that, pets and dogs in particular, from my perspective, have an important role to play in older life and end of life. And I think they deserve the respect and dignity and comfort of a new lease on life, when in a new forever home, when a person is no longer able to care for them. So plan ahead as much as you can. And I guess that's really the takeaway. Acknowledge the importance that animals play in people's lives and their well-being, and plan ahead if you're no longer able to be here.
Wonderful. Angela, same question. One takeaway you'd like everybody to come away with after this session?
I think the biggest one for me would be, there are people out there like Ardra and myself that love your animal and will love your animal just as much as you do. We care so deeply. I know every time we do an adoption, I cry. I have a lot of feelings, but I cry. The volunteers cry. We are working around the clock. There are no days off in this kind of world. We love your animal, and if we agree to help, we are going to do everything we can and more. There are people out there that will love your animal. There are good, wonderful, kind souls that will adopt your animal at any age, any health condition. We have adopted out cats up to 18 years old with 3 legs, diabetic cats, cats that are literally triple bonded, 3 cats that are a 3-for-1 deal, cats in rural Ontario, you name it. We have found a second forever home for these animals because they're out there. They're good, kind, incredible people out there. Last Christmas, we had 2 cats that were 16 years old. We had 3 weeks to find them a home, and 17 people applied. And of those 17, 15 were perfect. The daughter had no hope. She said, this is kind of a lost cause. And I said, it's really not. I know they're out there and we can do it. And I mean, yesterday we had 2 cats adopted together that are 15 and 17. And their second forever homes are out there. Their homes are out there. There is somebody that will love your animal after you. And you just have to hold out that little hope and not think, like we always thought in my family, that there was, what were we going to do with Mackenzie? There was nobody that was going to take her. She was growly, she's grumpy, she was vicious. Like, what were we going to do. And I mean, there are thousands of Mackenzies out there and hundreds that have been adopted through us, Ardra, and other people that just love, love senior animals.
Yeah. Thank you both so much. That's everything for our interview portion of today's session. We're going to move on to our audience Q&A. Thank you so much to all of our viewers who have been watching and submitting your questions. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So this question is for Angela. So this audience member was a bit curious about something that you offered during your presentation about programs and information. And they're curious if you could add a little bit more or talk more about how to help animals process grief, or how, my grandfather's cat helps folks with their animals processing grief.
I think the biggest thing for us is we have some resources. Our volunteer veterinarian, Dr. Kayla Highland, she is amazing. She is a certified animal grief counselor. I did not know that was a thing until she joined our team. I didn't know that was a certification you could get. I think the biggest thing is understanding that grief is just as real. Like Art just said, we don't know what the animal term for it is, but grief is just as real for animals as it is for humans. I know Mackenzie experienced a lot of grief when she came to our home. She was her same growly, grouchy self, but I know as the time passed, she came out of her shell, and people can say that they're scared, they're in a different environment, but I think the biggest thing is acknowledging that animals grieve just as much as humans do. Animals are reliant on the routines and everything just as much as the people are, and the love goes deep and the grief goes deep, and the animals work through it just as humans work through it, but it's about being patient, taking time. There are a lot of details on our website. If you want to go to mygrandfatherscat.ca, there's a resource guide, lots of articles that you can read about grief that are probably more interesting than me rambling on about it.
I wouldn't be so sure about that, but thank you. Ardra, I might as well pose the same question to you as well. Is there anything else that you wanted to add, or resources from Elder Dog that could help somebody that's trying to help an animal that's processing grief?
Well, just what I was saying before about familiarity and, thinking ahead when a dog is going to a new forever home, that there is grieving involved. And so knowing those routines and familiar smells and the dog's possessions, which are important to him or her, those are all helpful. There are some natural remedies, rescue remedy, and some natural things that can help calm and relax dogs if they are grieving very significantly. But it's time and space, patience, respect, and familiarity that I would say would be the things that the part of the process that would be important.
Yeah, it sounds like it's very much the same things that would apply for humans when processing grief. So
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say the same thing. You can acknowledge the animal the way you would acknowledge yourself. What would you want? Would you need a distraction? Would you want somebody just to give you space? I think trying those different things, and just like Art just said, patience. Patience. I know anybody that experienced grief just needs to know that their loved ones just need to hang on a little more, and they'll get out of bed when they're ready.
Yeah.
And it's good for animals too.
Absolutely. Thank you both. Thanks to our audience member for that question. This one's for Ardra, and this is a research-based question. When someone is experiencing a terminal, let's say they have a terminal diagnosis, do you know of any research that talks about including the pet with that individual and what's in the pet's best interest? So does that include having the pet accompany that person as they're experiencing their death, or is it about separating them, or is it about them visiting their previous owner's body after they've died? Is there any research on that, or is there any other comments that you might want to share?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I would say that, that relationship is so strong, that we need to support that. I guess one thing I would say that dogs are incredibly resilient.
Mhm.
And so if we can support that relationship through to end of life, then I think that that's probably, and there is research to support this, not just I
Mhm.
think,
Yeah.
that is really important, which is why there is a lot of research on the role of dogs in palliative care, in hospice care, and we also know that when dogs are present, they help the grieving process for a family member who is left behind.
Mhm.
It's and that's very well documented in research. So really supporting that relationship as long as possible, I think is real. That's why I said earlier, you know, that that man's dying wish of having his dog with him, you know, until the very end, not being realized was just such a devastating experience.
Mhm.
So yeah, there is a lot of research to support that.
All right. Thank you. Next question. This is for both of you. So maybe we can start with Ardra for this one. So this audience member was curious, how do you get in contact with the chapters or pods, as you called them, across the country? And they did ask where they're located. So maybe we can add in a follow-up the locations across the country. But how does somebody get connected with that pod to start with, whether they want to offer their help or to receive their help?
Yeah, so two ways I would say. If you have access to a website, you go to elderdog.ca and there's a tab that says pods, PAWS. Click on that, and then there's a list and a contact for all of the pods across the country. And so you just click on that contact and you'll be sending a message to the leader of the pod. That's one way. And if you want to just pick up the phone instead and call our 1-800 number, 855-336-4226. The person who answers our toll-free line will gladly put you in touch with the pod in your area. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Angela, same thing. How could somebody get connected with my grandfather's cat? Let's say, across the country, if they want to connect with other adoption partners or sort of get more involved with folks across the country in the charity.
Yeah, so we operate obviously a little differently because we're not going into people's homes. But if you are, say, looking to use our rehoming service, we do everything at a national level. So everybody applies for the same form for our rehoming service and our pet pantry, and then we narrow it down from there. So once you apply, then we'll connect you. Well, you'll speak to myself first, and then it's a very unique service. So we just make sure everybody fully understands it, and then you'll connect with a volunteer. We do it you're going to meet them virtually, but we do it based on time zone. So we have a West Coast team, an East Coast team, and an Ontario team because we're very popular in Ontario these days. So no matter what the area is, you'll meet a volunteer. You'll work with a volunteer that's located in your area. Our volunteers are all very well trained, know the process like the back of their hand. And I think the most important thing is they truly will love your animal just as much as you do. We all get too upset. We're working on it. We're working on it. We all get too connected. For the pet pantry, it's the same thing. You apply national, and then we work through our wait list again based on West Coast, East Coast, and Ontario, and then we'll ship to you whether the pet food, whatever pet food your pet is eating. I think we all know that if you have a cat or a dog that likes one particular thing, I think cats are a little more rude about it, and they don't want to eat, and they don't like something else, they're just not going to eat it. And you can't convince a senior cat to eat what's put in front of them. You can't. It's not going to work. I know my cat will starve rather than eating something that's not fish flavored. So unless it's turkey that my mom makes, like
Of
turkey,
course.
of course, yeah. But other than that, yeah, So we will work with either your local pet store, your veterinarian to get the food, whatever food your animal is eating, shipped right to your door or credit, whatever works best. Every situation is so individual, so we work with everyone really on an individual level.
All right. Thank you both so much. We've got room for maybe about 2 more questions here. So this is for the both of you, and we'll try to keep it short and sweet. But this audience member is curious, what is the screening process for those who want to adopt? Is there a meet and greet with the current senior? Does the animal have an opportunity to transition into the new home or do a test run, if you will? And maybe we can start with Ardra this time.
Sure. So our process is fairly rigorous. There's first an adoption application, and we require 2 references.
Mhm.
We would follow up on the application with a phone interview. Then we would call references, and then we would do a home visit. And following that, if there is a dog that seems to be a really good match, because it's the match that's most important, then we would see if the person is interested in meeting this dog. And so there is a meet and greet arranged. And if it looks like it's going to be a good match, then there's a trial period of not less than 2 weeks for just to see how it all goes. And then we check in regularly during that 2-week period. And then if all is well, then there's a commitment letter. And then we do regular follow-ups, less regularly as time goes on.
Okay, thank you. Angela, same question. What's the screening process for someone who wants to adopt? And is there a meet and greet? And how does that work?
Yeah, so ours is a little different. The base is the same. So when someone is interested, they email the volunteer, and the volunteer who is already, each volunteer works with one senior and their animal at a time. So they really focus on that animal. They call the potential applicant and we fill out the application form over the phone. I think you can check a box that says I have kids, but maybe that means you have a stepson that just comes every second weekend that's like 16 years old, and you might identify him as a kid, but we really just chat with people, fill out the application form over the phone with the volunteer just to get all the information we possibly can about the potential family. And then we take it to the senior, their family, whoever we are working with for that animal. And if we deem them a good fit, we'll pass them along. Before we interview anyone, we get the kind of prereqs from the family. So does the cat already get along with kids? Does it get along with dogs? Does it need a backyard? Kind of what requirements are necessary. Then ultimately, if we think it's a good fit, we'll pass the information along to the senior. We'll just use senior to keep it simple, the senior, and it's up to them to interview this person however they see fit. We give them some questions, but ultimately, I don't think it's my place to tell somebody what they need to do to feel comfortable with someone adopting their animal. We recommend a meet and greet, phone interview, references, but ultimately, they can ask whatever questions they want. If they feel comfortable without references, that's okay. We leave it in their hands. And of the people they interview and do meet and greets with, it is the senior's choice of who adopts their animal. And then they work together to arrange transportation, things like that. Again, the goal is for the senior to do this before they move into a retirement home or pass away. But often it's the family afterwards that is dealing with this. And then we let them have whatever kind of relationship they want to. If they have an open adoption, we of course follow up, make sure they have everything they need, an adoption guide, everything like that. But ultimately, if they want to stay friends, have updates, dinners, whatever they want to do, it's up to them.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
All
was trying to
right.
be super quick and I think I rambled.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you both so much for joining us today. Congratulations, and thank you so much for the hard work that Elder Dog and My Grandfather's Cat is doing. I think it's an incredible mission, and I absolutely loved seeing all of the wonderful pets that you guys have supported. So thank you so much for that. And of course, thank you to our audience members, our supporters, for joining us today. We hope that you found this webinar worthwhile. It's thanks to the generosity of our supporters we can provide webinars just like this, as well as all of our other quality and compassionate services 100% free of charge to people across Canada. So we ask that you please consider paying it forward and empowering us to continue the work we do by making a donation today or when you're next able. Thank you so much for your support. Ardra, Angela, thank you so much for your time today. And that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and have a wonderful afternoon.